It's time.
Oh, I'm working on an exciting new project, imprint with Penguin Random House in Del Rey and Claw, and it's called Rachel Smythe Presents. And what it is it's basically celebrating other creators who do work based on mythology and help bring their stories to life. And it's really exciting, and I can't wait to get started.
Other creators touching on mythology, do you mean like mythology like outside of kind of the Greco-Roman pantheon, or
Yes.
like so from anywhere basically?
Yes. So, like at this stage, like it's at very early beginnings, so we haven't made those like complete decisions yet. Yeah, it will be, it could be Greek mythology, but mythology in general, that's what we're going for. Yeah.
That sounds, I love that. I'm so excited for that.
Actually, that kind of brings me, my first question I have for you is, when did your love for mythology start?
I've liked it for a really, really long time, like since childhood. I think my introduction to it is like really similar to a lot of people. So Disney's Hercules came out. I believe I was in, I forget, I might have been a middle schooler, but I don't know because the education system is different here. But it came out and I watched it and I was like, well, I was very fond of it. I loved it very much. And of course, like many people who see something they like, they need to research it a lot. And I basically, like me and my sister were very much into it. And I learned that Hades had a wife, and I was like, he has a wife. Why wasn't she in the movie? She is actually in the movie. She's like in the background having a giant cocktail. Yeah, if you look at the beginning bit of it, she's like got a drink, like a cocktail, like that's that big. Like, it's hilarious. But I mean, look out for her. She's talking to like a giant green man, I think. But anyway, yeah, no, I loved it and I researched it as a kid and just consumed as much as like humanly possible, and the rest is history.
What is it, do you think, about Hades and Persephone that keep people kind of coming back to this trope, to this story? Because I'm obviously a very big fan of them as a couple of this trope kind of relationship. So what do you think it is about them?
I think with Hades and Persephone, like particularly with the source material, it really lends itself to adaptation. There's a lot of like things that you can infer from reading it. Since I don't want to like do the stories like disservice by saying that they're not detailed, because of course they are, but they like prioritize different things because they're from a different time. And I think, oh gosh, like it's very versatile in terms of retelling. There's like a lot of ways you could take it, ways to interpret it. It's a beautiful feminist story about like mother facing like bureaucracy and like misogyny and patriarchy and getting her daughter back. So that's like a great story, but it's also like it can be like a tragic romance. Like it's very dynamic. There's a lot you can do with it. I personally, like going back to like my childhood, I remember reading about it and being like, what was her day like? What was Persephone's day like? What did they do? Where'd they go? What did they talk about? Where's her closet? How big is it? What are her outfits like? Did they like each other? Didn't they like each other? Maybe they liked each other later. And there's a lot you can do. It's really fun. Even if if I had to do it over and differently, I'd be like, yeah, again, but different. Like I love the story. It's great. Yeah.
Stories. Are there any other myths that you thought about retelling before Lore Olympus?
It's a good question. Give me a sec, because I know that I have. I really like. It's not a myth so much as it is a fable, I think, or a Grimm story, like the Goose Girl. Which is like, if you're not familiar with the Goose Girl, it's like a princess and then she's got like a handmaiden and they have to travel somewhere for some particular reason. And then on the way there, her handmaiden steals her identity. Like she like kicks her in a creek or something, I don't know. She's like, you're done, and like basically takes over and turns up to her like betrothed, and she's like, I'm the princess. And it's great. I think it's hilarious. And basically like the little goose girl, I think she gets called that because she looks after geese. Like that's her job. And to me, I'm like, I mean, you're meant to root for the goose girl, but I'm like, she is a princess. I'm like, meh. And I'm like, to me, I'm really compelled by like the opposite end of like this identity theft story. And it's like not the point of the story. The story is really about like being very good, because I think the goose girl is like, I'll work hard on a farm and whisper my secrets to an oven, I think. And then like the oven feels sorry for her. I don't know, like Grimm's a wild, like.
To read this now.
Look out for it. It's very funny, but I'm like, I like that story. It's great. Gosh, I know there's others, but I'm like having a brain meltdown today in this moment. There's so many to work with. No, I think that's the one that I really like. Oh, there's like, I've been learning a little bit more about like kind of Norse mythology, but not like because I know we all know like Loki and Thor and stuff, and they're very ubiquitous and everybody knows them, but like one's more based on like Vikings and stuff, like it's a little bit like divorced from that, and it's a little harder to research, but like they've got like some great like kind of warrior woman adventure stories, which like I'm having a hard time like remembering like the exact names and titles, but I'm like they're very beautiful, like with lots of magical jewelry, which I enjoy. I feel bad because I can't cite anything right now, but yeah, something like that would be great. Yeah.
So, 5 or so years that you've been working on Lord Olympus.
Yes.
Have you found anything in your approach to kind of adaptation that has changed since you first set out?
I think in the beginning, I think like one of the things about mythology is it does really lend itself to like creating a structure to a story, because having like a whole new story can be very daunting, and I think in the beginning I really leant on that, but I think going forward I was like, actually I can be like much more liberal with it, because after all, like I've never intended Lore Olympus to be like a beat for beat, like, you know, authentic retelling. It's more like, you know, honoring like the spirit of things, if you will. But I think, there's things where I'm like, oh, for example, like Hades, when he's in the underworld, when Persephone goes there, when she eats the pomegranate seeds, or like sometimes it's just like eating the food there causes you to stay there, and I'm like, well, why is Hades different in this case? How does he just go there? How is he just fine? So it was really interesting to like build in some like mechanics into the story that would show like what would happen to him when he went there, how come he's tied there. So that was really interesting to explore, and also like revisiting like what would happen when eating the seeds and how that affects Persephone in terms of story. So I think in terms of adaptation, it's really fun to try out something new, because everyone knows the original stories, and for me, what's fun about it is I really love the idea of people seeing something that I've made and learning about Greek mythology and then going and checking it out, the same way that I did with Disney's Hercules, which again is like not like completely faithful to the original stories, but like you can't really, Disney's not going to have like Zeus running around having affairs and stuff like that. Like that's not family friendly, or like the planets aligning and all that kind of thing. But it's like, yeah, I watched it, enjoyed it, and then learned about the source material, you know, and I think that's like a great thing. Yeah.
So the art form in Lore Olympus really stands out for its vibrance. It's quite beautiful. How did you decide which colors would represent each character?
So, for me, I look at what you can do in terms of storytelling. So a lot of like some of the pairs have like contemporary color matches. So Hades is blue, Persephone is pink, and so together it looks very nice. And also the whole of the underworld, like the environment is all blue, so when Persephone goes there she sticks out and it's very vibrant. And also when Hades goes to like Olympus, which is often like very like pastel toned, he sticks out, and it's like that sort of mechanic. For characters like, let's say maybe Aries. So he changes color when he's more angry, and this is slightly based on one of my friends. She had a baby who was a redhead, and she you know how babies sometimes they have no eyebrows, and you can preempt when her baby would get upset because you could see the eyebrows would start setting in and they get more red before she would get upset. So that's why Aries is kind of he's an orangey sort of a rusty color, but as he gets more upset he gets more and more red. So it's sometimes it's just functionality things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's cute.
Yeah.
So one of the things I love about Laurel is it is unafraid to tackle heavy topics. So obviously that comes with its own challenge, but were there any arcs or beats or moments that aren't inherently tough to tackle that you personally found unexpectedly tricky, I guess?
I think what is difficult in terms of storytelling, I don't know if this is a direct answer, but this is something that I do struggle with, is you have to keep the story interesting and fresh, especially when it's a long format story. And of course you have to do lots of cliffhangers and things to entice people to come back. And one of the things is introducing new stories and threads, and then later on resolving them and tying them up in a way that's elegant and satisfying to people and thematically correct. So I think that's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done, because I've always in terms of maybe the end of Lore Olympus, I've always known what that was going to look like. But with a long format story, you kind of have to refine it over time, because sometimes you reach a point and you're this no longer makes sense to me, and I don't think it's actually as satisfying as I thought it was going to be. And I think with endings, you really have to try your very best for people, because I'm this is what people will remember a lot about the series, and I've put so much effort into the end of mine, and it's taken a lot out of me to do, but I'm yes, it's good, I worked really hard on it, but it's one of the biggest challenges of my life, yeah, I would say.
Earlier you were mentioning, of course, the pomegranates, which
Yes.
is a huge component of the story. And something very unique about the way you tell the story is that there is a tone of agency. Persephone is choosing to do this. What about that theme of agency was important to you?
I think it's good to honor Persephone's character in this story, and I think a huge part of her growth as a character is learning to have agency. And I think, based on the content of the story and what we already know, I think it would be kind of doing her a disservice to have some level of not trickery, because I don't think that's the correct word, but just her not having a choice later on. I feel it would be a little bit of a step back. And not that that's necessarily a bad thing, because I feel not all development should be linear, but in for such a major moment, it had to be a choice, and it had to be a growth thing. So that's how I arrived there.
So I'm curious about the creative choice to have sort of the realm of the gods be, sort of a rough parallel to our present day. Mm-hmm. But then when they go to the mortal world, it's sort of the time period we think of when we think of mythology. So I was just wondering what inspired that creative choice and that disconnect between the two. Or not disconnect, but the kind of very distinct worlds.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for me, it's a couple of factors. One is obviously I love Greek mythology, so it feels like a missed moment to not have those ancient world references, and I'm kind of having my cake and eating it too, because I'm I get the fun of the modern world, but I also get to research all of the historical fashion and buildings and play with those sorts of things. And I think in a way it can potentially help contextualize some of those more historical, I guess, traditions, and see how they might translate over into the modern setting. But also I think, you also, when you read these stories, there's a few things that get brought up, if a mortal were to see a god, they would die, because it would be so spectacular. They'd just be I think oh god, Semele, literally like her body crumbles apart when she sees Zeus in his true form. So I think it's interesting, if like these mortals were to like see the modern Olympus, they'd probably not understand what they were looking at, and I think it would be fair to say that like the gods would not share technologies with the mortals in that way, and so to me it makes sense. Yeah.
I love that.
Thanks.
So you had the ending in mind for a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is like one of the most satisfying detours you took along the story? Like maybe an event or something that you didn't really think would happen, but it kind of did because of the characters?
I think, that's a good one. I think probably, so I'm really bad at measuring. So if you were to take me to a country fair and they had like the jelly bean guessing game and you were like, how many jelly beans are in here? And I'd be like, 10. And they'd be like, try again. And I'd be like, 1,000,000. And they'd be like, still wrong. And I'm like, I can't do it. So this was planned, but it took way longer than I thought it was going to. But basically, there's like a bit where Persephone goes to stay at Hades' house, but like that went for a really long time. And I was like, yeah, she's gonna be there for like 3 episodes tops. But I'm like, I think it's like at least 15, something like that. She was there for a while. Yeah. So, and I enjoyed that. That was fun. It was a good kind of like a cozy time in the story before it was upsetting. It was fun, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Did you always intend for the format of Lore Olympus to be comics? And if so, what was it about comics that lent to telling your story?
Writing is definitely like not my first strength. Like it's definitely the drawing component. And all the time I'm like, how did I do this? I don't know, and it's so scary. I'm like, all the time, I'm like, I think in the beginning, when I first started out, I was like, even the concept of making 20 chapters, I was like, I don't know if I got it in me, so, I don't know. So, it's definitely, the art definitely came before the story, and sometimes when I'm like doing like a big doodle, for like a very technical term, like a lot of like that process will actually give me like the writing ideas, and it's sort of like art first and then and then writing. But now I've gotten like the hang of it a bit more, so now I can like actually write an outline without doing the drawings first. So it's been a good learning experience. Yeah.
So no spoilers, obviously,
Okay.
but are there any sort of stories, myths, characters that you wanted to touch on that you haven't yet, or that you just won't have time to do for the end of the story? If that's spoilery.
No, it's fine. I think one of the things that I try to be conscious of is like I love all of my supporting characters equally, and I wish that everyone else loved them too, but not everyone wants like a massive side quest about like different characters. And I do think it's important to like be like, here's the supporting characters and this is what's happening to them, because they help enrich the story and like give a bit of breathing room. But it's a definite balance of learning when to draw that line of when people are like, I don't know who these characters are and I don't really want to like participate with them right now, but it's fine, you like what you like. I think one of the things that I would have done had it made sense, there's kind of like no easy way to put it in at this point, was there was supposed to be like an expedition to like Poseidon's like ocean world, and they were meant to do like some stuff in the ocean world, but I'm like, I just don't, like there's no good place to fit it in, and I'm like, never say never. Like it could definitely, yeah, it's a spin-off for sure. I'm like, you could always come back and do it like later on. But yeah, it was just something where I was like, oh, yeah, I don't, it throws off the pacing. But yeah, we never got to go to like the underworld, the ocean kingdom and see what it's like, and it's very chaotic. It's very like, nobody's doing the dishes. Nobody's doing the laundry, but everyone's very chilled out, yes.
were there any cultural differences you think, or when you were like coming across or doing your story, that you felt that maybe things might have to be touched up for modern tastes, like stuff maybe, I don't know, like from the Greek myths, adapting them into like a modern story?
Yes, it's very hard because Greek mythology is it's very like universal, and it's like the backbone of Western storytelling, and it's ubiquitous. But like a lot of it is very like it's very dark, and even particularly with the abduction of Persephone, like if I were to tell that like beat for beat, people would be like, ma'am, you need to get off the internet, like hand in your Twitter, hand in everything, you need to go, like you gotta get out, because I think some people are like, this isn't accurate, and I'm like, did you want the incest? Like, here you go. Like, is that what you wanted? I'm like, I don't know. So yeah, like you do have to, you know, take some and leave others, and you know, I mean, someone else can do that. It's cool. Yeah, you get my drift.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Last question. Something I really love about Lore Olympus is your fashion choices for Persephone.
Thank you.
So how do you choose what outfits basically you're going to put her in and what they represent for her journey?
So I love picking out clothes for her, and I try to like before I mentioned about like, you know, a character's growth isn't necessarily linear, so I'll kind of like spot in things, but in the beginning she's like wearing a lot of like white, and there was sort of like a structure with that in the start, in the sense that like Hades is like wearing a suit all the time, Persephone is always wearing white, so they like could potentially get married at any point, like they look like they're coded to look like a bride and a groom, because like initially at its core like that story is like about marriage, and is like important in some like regions of like ancient Greece. They told it as like a marriage story in some areas, so I was like, I'm going to honor that part of the story. But in terms of like Persephone's growth, you'll see like later on in the series she starts to like wear more green, and then later on she's like in the arcs that we're currently having, she's wearing a lot of like blacks and like dark blues, but occasionally she will still wear some pastel colors. And for me it's about keeping a balance, because I'm like, I don't think that Persephone should like have to give up like whole elements of her identity, so it's important for me to like mix those different color palettes in. But in terms of like silhouettes and things, I try to pick things that are classical and like just like really nice like A-line cuts, or like fit and flare, like that kind of thing. Like the shapes and silhouettes, like they're meant to age very well, so they'll look good in like 10 years time, and like not all of the fashion in it will look like that, some of it will become terribly dated, but it's like me in an effort to like future proof some items. Yeah. Oh, was that?
No, that was great.
Okay, cool.
That was very
All right. Okay.
So earlier you mentioned, you know, having the light moments before all of the heartbreak, which I think exemplifies Lore Olympus, like we're laughing and then we're crying. What is your trick? Because I know there's not one trick to kind of managing that give and take, that balance between the two.
I think it's a cultural thing to do with New Zealand, and we're very like, you gotta laugh in the face of evil. Like a lot of our jokes are like dark in terms of like, we'll be like, we're having a terrible day, haha, kind of thing. So I think we really like understand levity where I'm from, and it just feels like a very natural thing to do, where sometimes something bad will happen, and I think in an effort to like balance that out, we'll like find a way to laugh at it. So I think that is just something that comes very naturally to me. I think there are times when I'm like, is this appropriate to put a joke in here? Because I'm like, I don't want to be insensitive, but like for me personally, I feel like I always manage everything with humor, and I think that works for other people. But yeah, levity is hard. It's a hard balance for sure. Have I always made the right call? I'm not sure, but I do try. Yeah.
I'm not sure if this was asked, but what was the Greek myth that kind of sparked your interest in that whole catalog?
Hades and Persephone? Yeah. That was it? Yeah.
Is there a myth that you feel you would be up for like remixing?
Oh gosh, like in terms of like another myth, I think I really like, I did talk about like a fable before, but I will turn back to myths because I feel like I remember it now. I really like the Odyssey, of course.
Yes.
But I really want to do something from like Penelope's point of view. And I think like Madeline Miller's already done like that. She's got like a previous version. But I would really love to do a comedy about Penelope because I love that woman so much. Yes. So that would be fun.
That would be so good.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah. So if I could, that's what I'd do.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.